welcome to episode 23 of On My Studio Table. I'm really pleased to be sharing what I'm sharing with you today. Some of what I'll be sharing is to do with the eco-printed papers that I did about a week ago, and I did show you some of the things that I made from the papers, and I've been very busy since then making some more items, more cards, and also a rather special hand-bound book. So they're coming up in this video. And I would also like to share with you a very special outfit that is hanging on the cupboard behind me. I made this in memory of my mother, and it was entered in a wearable art event, which is coming up again this month. When she died, we were all able to salvage some things that belonged to her that Dad didn't want to keep. And one of the things that I salvaged was one of her skirts. And it was a grey wool skirt that she wore a lot. She often wore it with a blazer and a really pretty blouse. And the colour of her blazer was almost the same colour as the top hanging behind me. So I designed and made these two items to go together. I made the skirt first, and the grey wool patches have embroidery on them and applique, and then they've been stitched onto some silk wool, a beautiful woven fabric that was given to me, which I had for a number of years before I knew what to do with it, which often happens. And I drafted the skirt pattern using just basic rectangles, and the same with the top. The items that I've embroidered were all based on sketches that I made, and they were all everyday things that spoke of home life and our happy childhood with our parents. The top is a boat neck top, also based on rectangles, and it is asymmetrical. So the sleeve that is behind the skirt is a different shape to the one that you can see here. I also made a video to go on the big screen behind the wearable art event. So the models who were showcasing our work went onto a catwalk, and on the stage was a giant screen, and if we wanted to, we could have something playing while the clothing was being modelled. So I'll include that in this video, and I hope you enjoy it, and it explains a bit more about how I made this and why. This is a book that I made from the eco-printed papers. In fact, it was the last sheet of eco-printed card, which I cut in half to make the front and back covers. I've done a closure made using a piece of recycled t-shirt yarn, and I've just looped it around so that the ends just go through that loop. And I've got this at an angle so you can see it, because it doesn't quite fit on the screen. It's actually quite long. It's A4 sized or letter sized, folded in half and then cut for the covers. You'll see that I've done pamphlet stitch to hold each of the signatures or sections together. And then what I've done is I've cut tabs, which I've woven through the pamphlet stitches. and then glued them down front and back. You can just see a little bit of Tasmanian native fern here on the cardboard. When I turn it over, you'll see more of it. So it was all the one sheet, which I cut into 4 because I wanted the pattern or the design of the fern to be consistent. I also used some of the offcuts when I was trimming the covers as collage on the covers. You see some here too. This is the front cover. And when you open it, and I'll just straighten this up now, when you open it, you'll see that it has cardi paper pages, which are very textured and quite firm. So they will take watercolour paint, drawing, glue, anything that you might like to use. So you'll see that it has quite a few pages. And it's been hand stitched, as I mentioned, with waxed linen thread. So much fun making things from the eco-printed papers that I shared with you last video. And these are cards that I've made. I've actually made a total of 12. And it's just been a joy to be able to feature these papers. I feel like a bit of the nature that surrounds where I live is kind of captured in these prints and items. These cards are half A5, so if you think of A5 as being half of an A4 sheet, you fold an A4 sheet in half, you get A5, and then I have folded the A5 to make these cards. So as I said, there are 12. They've all been stitched with pamphlet stitch to hold a blank insert so that it's easy to write a message when you use these for greeting cards. And if you open it, you'll see that it has an asymmetrical stitched page and then my stamp and some writing in the back, just as I did in the other items I shared last time. So if you haven't seen that episode, just go to my playlist on my studio table and you'll see what I shared last time. I really love the eucalyptus leaves on this side of the card, but both sides are really interesting. 2 sorts of eucalyptus leaves, and I think there's a little vestige of Banksia there as well. And often the inside is just as interesting because I generally have reversible paper and cloth. String lines there and there. So I've sort of roughly got these in 2 groups, I think. Some feature eucalyptus, some feature Banksia. And I think there may be 1 or 2 that feature both. And as you can see, some are paler than others. And that's because they were done around copper pipe. This is rather lovely, this Banksia one. And if you turn it over, it's got quite a pale back, but still really interesting. And then inside is quite pale also. This one is quite dramatic, and that's Banksia and eucalyptus. There's a bit of Rustic handprint. So this one, even though I thought it was round copper pipe, I think it may have actually been around a Rustic can. A little bit more Banksia there. This is another Banksia one. And you can see some Rustic can there also. So Banksia is really, really common here. It's a plant that grows naturally in the bush or forest area on our land. And apparently there was quite a lot of damage in the storms that we had in September. And a lot of Banksia trees either broke or fell down. But they do sprout up very quickly again. So it's just part of the natural cycle, I think. So another Banksia one. And one gum leaf on the back, or maybe two, actually 2 gum leaves. And this one has Banksia and gum leaves on the back. You might remember from the previous video that I had a lovely surprise when I attempted to eco-print on the paper that you put through your printer for printing photos. So it's special photo printing paper. And the results were really quite surprising and very, very pleasing. So I've started to put them onto some handmade paper, which I purchased. I didn't make it myself, although I have made my own paper in the past. And I've used that as a mount for the beautiful print on the photo printing paper. And then I've adhered it to some cardi paper. So this is again A4 cardi paper, which I've folded in half. And I'm going to stitch something inside. These could be large cards, but I'm feeling like they're going to be journals. So I'll probably stitch some sheets of paper inside. And I think that the handmade paper really suits the colours on these prints. So these were all done with tea tannin dip. So I dipped the papers in a tea solution. Some of them I also dipped in an iron solution. You can probably see the change in the colour. So these are the ones that I've been starting to get ready. I use an archival double-sided tape, which makes it a lot easier and less messy than glue. So in the pack that I bought, there were a few different types of handmade paper. Some were sort of a bony tan colour, and some were more a whitish cream colour. And I think it sets it off really well because of the textures. So there will be quite a few by the time I'm finished. As I mentioned, some of the eco prints on the photo printing paper ended up getting a little bit damaged. And I did mention in the last video that I was thinking about adding some stitch. So I did a bit of an experiment on this particular one. As you can see, the bracken fern print is actually quite good, but the other plant, which I don't know the name of, didn't print all that well, but also some of the paper peeled off during the drying process. I had them lying face down on some plastic and it stuck to the plastic. So I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to add some stitching. And I wasn't sure if I liked this to begin with, but I think I do like it. And so I feel as though I can actually try some of the other ones that didn't work out as well. I used a mixture of stitches. I used a chain stitch, which is a little bit elongated, and I made a little piece come out of it rather than stitching it right down as a neat chain, and used some French knots, some circles done in whip stitch, fly stitch, and a bit of running stitch. And I don't think I need to do any more to this one, and we'll see what eventuates with the other ones. The original 3 forest-themed cards has grown to another 6, so that's a total of 9. And I'm really happy with how these turned out. And because the paper is only 120 GSM, as I mentioned in the last video, I did fold them in 4, so it's more robust. And then the 120 GSM paper that I also used for the eco printing has been collaged on top. So again, they feature eucalyptus leaves. I don't think I used Banksia leaves, although we might see some. And of course, you can see Rustic there. Some were wrapped around copper pipe. So this one, looking at the colour, would have been wrapped around copper pipe, and the darker ones would have had Rustic cans in close contact. So yes, mainly eucalyptus leaves by the look of it. So everything that I'm showing you that I've made from the eco-printed papers are going to be available for sale at an event that I'm attending on the 16th and 17th of November in Longford, Tasmania, at an event called Longford Blooms. And there's also a garden festival on at the same time, so there'll be open gardens, there's live music, all the cafes are open, there are food vans and pop-up shops, including mine, and another friend who will be displaying our wares in the Uniting Church Hall. So if you find yourself in or near Longford, please call in and say hello. They are also for sale online, including these envelopes that I've made. They're foldable envelopes, and I demonstrated to you how they worked last time. And it's basically a square of paper, again 120 GSM, with a rather nice texture on it. And then they are closed with a seal, which I include with the cards. So I'll just show you that in case you missed it last time. So that actually seals the envelope shut after you wrap it around the card. And I've put double-sided tape on the back so you can stick it down. to admit that the latest journal entry in our slow stitching exercises with Catherine Chambers of K3N Cloth Tales was a bit of a challenge. What she was asking us to do was to stitch with blindfolds on. And that really did cause me to hesitate, just like I am now. And I thought, can I do this? And I actually left it for quite a few days before I even felt like I could tackle it or even finish watching her video. I didn't expect to find it that difficult, and I discovered a few things about myself in this kind of exercise. The first thing I discovered was that blindfolds make me anxious, and that's just a feeling that I can't explain. So even thinking about it made me not want to do it. And then another person in the group shared that she did hers without her glasses. And I thought, what a great idea. I think I could do that. I'm very short-sighted, so when I took my glasses off, everything was very blurry, and it was still a challenge to do. And I guess what it was like for somebody who is vision impaired was how I felt. So not totally without sight, but certainly vision impaired. I had chosen some simple shapes because I knew that I wouldn't be able to do anything too complicated. And I surprised myself by discovering that I could still stitch quite evenly, even though I couldn't see properly. I chose some eco-printed silk, which has some gum leaves on it, a bit of old pillowcase, a piece of vintage woolen blanket that I naturally dyed a long time ago with blackwood leaves and iron, and another piece of wool that has been eco-dyed. And I just kept to a basic running stitch, and then a little bit of whip stitch, which also starts with a running stitch, some cross stitch, and some straight stitches. I did try and do a couple of concentric circles there, but they did not turn out very well because I really couldn't see properly where to put my needle. So I would just like to say thank you, Catherine. It was a really good exercise to do. And sometimes you just have to face your fears, even if you don't really understand why you are feeling fearful or anxious. And I am quite pleased with the result, actually, which surprised me also. I also learned that I could really hear the sound of the thread coming through the cloth, because I think your other senses are heightened when one sense or more is impaired. And I also could hear Catherine really well because I watched her video while I was doing this, but I couldn't see her very well. So it was a very interesting experience. And the sound of the thread pulling through the cloth sounded different through this difficult bit than it did through the easy wool, which is lovely to stitch through. I thought about birds too, and how birds have to fly quite high sometimes to see where they need to go, whether it's for food or for nesting or whatever else, finding water. And I know that a lot of birds have really, really good eyesight. But I know that if I was as high as a bird, I would have a similar effect to what I had without my glasses. Everything would look blurry. So I wrote this as my little bit of writing to go with this. It feels like a bird's eye view. Hard to see the details. And I know birds like eagles and kookaburras have extremely good eyesight. So it just made me think about all those things. you.